Yo, what's good, guys? It's No Name. So, new type of idea here, right? Let me break down the idea to you. I like making POBs. I love doing it. I do it on stream, off stream, morning, day, night, weekend, weekday. I make POBs all the time. And I feel like it'd be awesome if I could bring that to you here on YouTube, right? And I wasn't exactly sure how to do it. So this is my first attempt at doing so. It's going to be lengthy because I'm not editing beyond this introduction. Once I have finished with the intro and showing you guys the footage and all that good stuff, it's just going to be watching me work, and if you do watch it, let me know how that goes for you, right? I want to know how to make this information digestible, but we'll talk about that a little bit more after I finish prefacing what in the world I was working on, right? So, in my previous video, I talked about leaving trade because it just the magic and sparkle wasn't there, which, by the way, very much unrelated but still notable, is that leaving trade has definitely resparked my interest in this league. There's been some cool stuff to talk about from the non-trade perspective, and so I might talk about those things later as well. But leaving trade, it was like, okay, do I go to the private league with my friends or do I go SSF? And I got told to go into the private league with my friends, and it's just because, I can technically pretend to be SSF while in a private league, which is what I wanted to do primarily because I wanted to do some testing on how it feels to SSF your first 4 watchstones. Like, actually all 4 watchstones now, right? Because with the addition of the harvest ability to swap Uber Elder fragments and the guarantee of Maven invitations from Keurig, it felt like it had to be so much more of a streamlined process, and a process that doesn't make you want to bang your head against the wall. And spoilers, it absolutely is so much better of a process. This is around 25-ish hours / played when I killed the Uber Elder for my 4th watchstone. However, it's not the point of this video either. That's just kind of the results of the POB in here. Like I said, the point of this video is going to be to show you the POB process. I'm just giving you the constraints under which I do it within, which is I wanted to play Hexblast Trickster. That build is primarily a trade build outside of a couple people. Like, if you look on PoE Ninja, as you'll see me do later in the start of my process, not very many people start Hexblast in SSF, and it's because they need certain items. You need a source of curse on hit to go with a source of aura curse, and the aura curse can be handled by the user, but the curse on hit, not so easy. And once you get your source of curse on hit, that's when you can actually play the build. But you'll notice that in SSF, people who are playing it are doing it in adapted ways, as opposed to the standard setups that you see in trade. And so that basis is what made me interested, and I wanted to see how those setups actually feel for getting to different points in progression, which is what made me wanted to do the run all together. So with some little bit of twink gear, right? Twink leveling gear, and Dreadarch was a part of that leveling gear, just so I can actually play Hexblast early on. I set off into the run, and well, I mean, like I said, I got all 4 of my watchstones exactly as I said I was gonna do, and it was definitely in part due to the fact that this league mechanic is really, really strong for fixing certain usual holes in progression. Just as a really obvious one is getting you a 5 link at times that you might need one guaranteed. You can have that coming out of the campaign, but I ended up doing it after Eater Exile because I just never dropped one. That saved me having to burn the fuses to get a 5 link. Then, again, the harvest update plus the new multi-tree system on the Atlas tree, it really made a perfect storm for that. And that was pretty awesome to be able to interact with. But again, that stuff I can talk about at a later time. If you guys want me to, let me know. What is really important here is the translation between the POB that you're going to see it and the build itself. How I go from a build that tends to be really reliant on specific uniques as per how softcore trade usually plays with the build, to a setup that I was able to get working all the way through. And with that, I leave you guys with the rest of the video. If you like this type of video, likes help, comments, and letting me know that this is great for you. helps me a lot. All that good stuff, subscribing if you want to see more of what I do. But here's the thing though, if you like the type of video, I also do just want specific feedback about ways that I can make this better. I want to be able to make this type of video easier to digest, because even just thinking about like I recorded for 45 minutes to get the footage, but you'll be watching 45 minutes. I want to know how we feel about watching that back. And that's it, right? Enjoy the POBing. Hope it is at least somewhat informational as you get to see just how I come up with all the stuff I do. And I will include the links to both the POBs that I kind of sort of ended up with in the description, as well as what my character was like at the end of my 4 watchstones, so you can see how the plan really manifested in reality throughout the run when I was doing my work. All right, let's get into it. All right, so let's get into it, right? I've already told you that I plan on playing Hexblast. And now, well, I know how I'm going to play it. I just want to talk a little bit about how I decide how I want to play it before we get into the nitty gritty of making the POB happen. Right? So, playing it, I want to play Trickster because it's more defensive. Your other options tend to be, for Hexblast especially, you get an SSF, you'll see that it's almost exclusively just Sabo and Trickster. Sabo for more damage, Trickster for defenses. And if you see in trade, you get a Cultist for even more damage, right? With charge stacking setups. So again, no, Trickster, that's what I want to do. You can just PoE Ninja to see this information, kind of see how people are scaling, see how people's characters come together like in the early days. If you're like me and looking at a group found or like any purely trade, like the standard, like the usual trade league environment, you might look at like some of the earlier day POBs to kind of see how people are coming together with this. Like if I look here on day 3 for this character, he's got a helmet already. He was grinding that Sanctum because it's the number one thing he needed. But you can see before that, he just has a regular helmet on and probably is running like increased crits in their links. Yep. And if I go back another day, it might be before the Profane Proxy even. Yep, no Profane Proxy, which means that they're doing like blasphemy support stuff. I'm not going to explain too much of the details of how this build works unless I think it's pertinent to a decision I'm making in the POB part of this. Just showing how I come up with the idea and like how I evaluate their decisions based off of what I see. And that usually comes from a little bit of external research I do beforehand with, say, like watching Ventrua's guide on how Hexblast works and the character that he's making. I'll crash course it here in case you're using this as an opportunity to learn how to play Hexblast as well, which is fuck. All right, so in case you're using this to like crash course how to play Hexblast, I will show you how Hexblast works. Hexblast as a gem has chaos damage, and it's got 2 really important mechanics. 1, it does double damage to cursed enemies. This is important. We need to find a way to make sure that the enemy is always cursed when we hit them. It'll give us AoE around that target and increased damage against them. That's one thing to remember. And number 2 is the chaos damage with hits is resisted by lowest resistance instead line. This line is critically important. How do we make this line work for us though? So there's a variety of rest shredding effects in the game, such as curses and all that good stuff. So we're going to stack those in one element and shred so that we can do chaos damage against fire resistance, for example. Why fire? It's the one you can shred the furthest. Let me show you what I mean. If I apply flammability and elemental weakness, and I get a source of like, let's say wave of conviction. Let me just, and then I support that source of elemental, the wave of conviction with combustion. We have 4 effects all reducing their fire resistance. That's peak. You can do this with cold and lightning as well. It's just that cold and lightning do not have combustion support. If you see a cultist version, so they might do cold because of void beacon, for example. So, that's just like a flexibility piece, because it's really just about shredding whichever one you can as low as you can. That's all that really matters, right? And this gets even more flexible when we talk about like curse on hit jewelry. So let's put together the character, right? Step 1, like I said in the intro, not actually that important to be original. It's about making sure you understand what you're doing. So I like Hexblast. I studied Hexblast. I've helped people build characters. I've worked on it with Francis. They were explaining how their version of it worked. I've watched Ventura's version. So this general tree here that I'm looking at is pretty good, except for one glaring issue and the reason I haven't directly imported this immediately is because there's a cluster here that he then builds off of for a lot of our points. And we don't want to assume we have that because I don't actually know the economic state of the Private League we're going into. So let's do this real quick, right? Shadow, Trickster, Ascendancy nodes. We know that I'm going to do this. And we know that we're going to go like this. Bang, 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 bang. Up here, right? Like a lot of this tree is just straight from Ventura. You'll see the similarities. I wasn't kidding when I said like you take from that which has already been laid out for you, because realistically if I built this myself I would just end up in this position from actually just raw muscle memory. I've done Trickster Miner before. I did a Toda on Icicle Miner. I should play Icicle Miners twice on Trickster and one on Deadeye. So like we're pretty familiar with this section of the tree even in recent memory. What you see here, Ventura's version goes around like this, and then like this, and like this, and let's see. We take mana nodes because we need the mana for this build to function. Alrighty. So 67, and then we add in a cluster, and that's where all the rest of the points would come from to get us to like 80 something. We don't have a cluster though. So let's think about a way that we can fill in the points without having a cluster. And also, we have to add in our masteries. Damage, because remember, we're a trickster. We need our masteries. Suppress, it's lucky just in case we're not actually suppress capped at this point. On the ES mastery, you can choose between less damage taken on a full ES and chaos damage does not bypass energy shield. Pick which one you think feels more relevant to your character. With Spellbreaker, I'm going to lean towards the less damage taken. When not on Spellbreaker, I think the chaos damage one is actually more impactful. Crit multi. This curse one is just good to get a defensive one and also to get this mastery for polymath. Mine ones are all active. We gotta make sure we get a life one in there. We have a reservation one to get active. Alrighty, we've activated all of these. We can even again add this mastery here for 15% life. And now you see polymath is fully active. It's got 8 masteries to go off. Alrighty. Let's add some more points though, because we're only 74. This cluster, if we were to add it, would put us at like 91, I believe. Because of the Ventura's version has 91 points, and I believe I have the exact same tree at current state except for this cluster. So instead of that cluster, you'll see that there wasn't actually a version of this POB that didn't have the cluster in it at level 91. It just goes straight to it because he's a trade character. He just knows like, yep, I'm hard priorly getting that cluster in. So that's a note for us if we're playing in any game mode to hard priorly getting the cluster. But until then, this is how we get around not having the cluster. Path over top, grab some damage nodes, grab a life node, and call it a day, right? This is the poor man's version. We can also even add in Deep Thoughts for additional mana to help out with the skill being egregious on mana. All right, let's add in the rest. Let's actually add in the rest of our gems now. This is the next step I usually take after getting a tree that I like. Like I have a tree I like for now. I might optimize it some more, and I have the ascendancy nodes. Next up, the gems. High impact mine. That's how we play. That's how we make Hexblast a mine skill. Make sure you have this set to hit damage and non-awakened gems. And now I know I want to go with now. So this is a part that comes with knowledge that POB wouldn't show immediately. Charge mines is the top tier support for this build. Let's go get our config right while I'm thinking about it. Exposure type none for now because it won't actually matter all that much. Guardian, not yet anyways. It will matter when I'm actually checking the damage of the build to make sure I'm satisfied, but it's not super important. We can put ignited, we can put frozen, we can put shocked, as the skill can do all 3 of these things. We can do blinded, we can do cursed. None of the rest of this is relevant to us. We detonated a mine recently. All right, config is done. Now, Hexblast mines. The other core support is always minefield. These 4 supports make up the core of playing a mine build when you're playing with, like, this just feels good stuff. Charge mines is not always the highest damage support, but it sure as hell is one of the best feeling. And especially right now with no throwing speed, it's super good. Next up, we want our reservations to be in order. So let's move some stuff around. Reservation links. Grace, because we're a trickster. And because we're playing Hexblast, we need a curse aura. Now, there's a way to get a curse aura that doesn't require us to use the reservation space, And that is through Profane Proxy, which you'll see on the day one, he doesn't assume having because it's actually kind of rare. But this does give us a curse aura that we can work with instead. Once we have that, and that's great because we can replace our shocking aura, which we don't need because we can shock as Hexblast, to then apply the curse. But until then, we tend to apply that curse ourselves through Elemental Weakness on a Blasphemy support. Makes it cost as much mana as our Skitter bots would cost us, but at least we get the reservation in. We need this reservation in order to function. The other thing that we need, so we can remove LEDs, we need the flammability. Flammability actually comes from an item usually. We can get it at first from Dreadarch. The other way to get our curse on hit. The other ways to get our curse on hit. Any corrupted pair of gloves that says elemental weakness on hit, or any ring, whether that be from Delve or from Influence, that says frostbite, conductivity, flammability, or elemental weakness on hit. And you might be thinking, okay, wait a minute, why did you just name conductivity and frostbite? Well, like I said earlier, we just need to shred one resistance. And so if the curse on hit ring that we are given tells us to shred fire resistance, tells us to shred lightning resistance, we're shredding lightning resistance. Why are we willing to give up the little bit extra we get from combustion so easily? Because I promise you, combustion is not worth your entire weapon slot. This weapon gives you no stats. This is just to make your skill work, because your skill is just that strong. And you'll see here, like, it's so strong that even when he's running it, he's still running it with a shield, even though you could put another weapon on it and actually do even more damage. But the skill just works on Dreadarch. So, let's see, what else do we need? Like I said, we have flammability now from our weapon. We have Wave of Conviction Combustion. I like to add Arcanist Brand to this so that I don't have to cast it myself. That's how I usually do it in the early game. You can get the exposure on your gloves later on through the glove implicit. That's how that goes, right? And again, not really reinventing the wheel. This is all here in front of us. Like, we could literally copy paste this gem setup too, and it would work immediately. Spell totem, whether faster casting, multiple totems. And I usually build these PLBs out myself just so that, and like from working on people's PLBs, because I want the practice of making all of these different builds. It just makes me faster at doing it. It makes it that I'm very well versed in how things go, as opposed to just copying and playing the builds and calling it a day. I get to really get into the feel of how the build is put together. That's a personal thing though, right? Like, if you're not into that, you're not into that. But that's the thing that I've always been into. And so we get the totems. I'm going to fast forward a little bit to the part where I've already put all the gems in here, because this part no longer really needs that much explanation until I have all the gems in here. All right, added all the gems in now. Let's talk about very quickly what I added while I was like in the cut, right? We have our main gems. You can add in here if you want for the additional supports. Add it increase crits, and what usually, or at least early on before you get the helmet, we'll talk about the helmet in a little bit. Increase crits and what could be trap in mind, what could be void manip, what could be increased damage depending on what you need. We'll put increased damage here for now, but I believe, or crit damage, but I believe void manip's usually the better 6th link. Not that important though right now, right? Let's just go back. We're disabling both of these anyways for now. We're testing early on starting damage first. Next up, you get the Wither Totem setup. This is so that we can apply Wither stacks for the build. This does stamp. This is just a lot of damage. Like you can see, I take this out. The build damage doubles. That's incredible. We like that. Next up, This is our movement setup. Shield charge and flame dash are movement skills. Withering step is not actually a movement skill, but it is another way for us to apply wither stacks so that we can do it in like a burst window that we need. It applies 6 stacks to 20, 7 stacks to 21. You can go to 21-20 and get 9 stacks. 20-20 is more realistic, and you'll get 8 stacks from that. Very good for like rares that you encounter. It's like, oh my god, this guy's not fucking dying. Whoop, walk through, blow him up real quick. You know what I mean? I realized I messed up one piece here, so we're going to change something very quickly about how I did this. This has automation and call to arms, enduring cry, and this is all really, really good and all. However, your options here are to either drop Arcanist Brand and just cast your Wave of Commission yourself, which might be worth it for what I'm about to show you. Ready? So let's just say you do that. Call to arms and enduring cry over here. All right, this is now another 4-link. I'm going to readjust this a little bit to get it back in order. And now this right here is going to become a 3-link. And it's because we can put automation with both our steel skin and our detonate mines. Detonate mines on automation feels incredible. It's basically like having the old left click detonate back. So this is great. And this will make sure to trigger both of our skills. We'll have our guard skill going and we'll have our detonate mines going. So I like that better than, we'll just cast the Wave of Commission. It is what it is. And then Enduring Cry on Call to Arms is for a source of endurance charges, which is PDR. And remember, we're a Trickster with Swift Killer. So our charges last 30 seconds. So it's very likely they'll be able to do entire maps with all of our endurance charges. This was easy to sustain on bosses already without being a Swift Killer. But it's especially easy now on mapping with Swift Killer. So that's great. And then remember, we have our reservation set up. And that's all we needed. That's the gem setup for now, right? Maybe we come up with another change later. Maybe something to think about. So let's just sim out some of the gear pieces, right? One of the big things that we're going to need, right? Really, do we even need to sim out other gear? Let's look through the gear that we have in other POBs here. Some damage slot pieces that help out a little bit. Restless Ward is just a good quality of life unique. It's very fast. It gives you regen. It's also very common. Very, very common, actually. Just like Dreadarch is. These are both common uniques that you could actually get very quickly, even as of Endogri's tenure as well. So then it's just, throwing speed where possible. That makes sense. And then life resistance gear to fill in the character. All right, so life resistance gear aside, we're not going to fill all that in immediately unless you want to check the defense numbers. But let's start by checking the damage. Let's add in easy to get items. Like I'm looking at a private league. These are easy to get items. Looking at even SSF, these are like Dreadarch is a T4 or T5 unique. I believe Doju's tenure is literally T4. I believe Restless Ward is also T4. I might double check this and edit if I remember. But these items are all here. This does not contribute to our damage at all, by the way. This is just to make us even safer, right? We're getting regen, we're getting MS, we get even more charge duration off of this chest. This could easily be replaced with a non-unique chest though, right? And then the rest of the gear is stock standard, right? You look at the character here that we're basing it off of. This is all standard gear with like a damage mod on the amulet and a damage mod on the shield. Now, me personally, so I have shield charge in here, right? Something I would consider though is Dreadarch any good on speed? Dreadarch is 1.4 at base, right? So you could get another 1.4 weapon, like say like a scepter, and leap slam with it. Like that's an option that's available to us. Where's the scepters at? Scepters. And now the implicits on scepters are pretty pointless outside of like sandbar scepters, and I believe there's another one that has pen on it. No, it's just sandbar. Like outside of Samurai Scepter is irrelevant, but this leap slam speed of say like a Karui Scepter is very appealing for say if you wanted to get an actual damage weapon here. I'm not like that's up to you. You can put either or. I will leave it as a shield just for now to make sure we shore up all the resistances across all the available pieces that we have. The only other option for damage there is to get an amulet that gives you damage through say like usually you want it here to be a citrine based on the stats that I see on the sidebar here. Look, strength required, dex required. So we need those, which is I'm probably looking at literally focusing on, I want strength. I would love to get +1 chaos when possible here. And we won't even know what to craft on here. I'll probably be fixing something that we need to craft here. Alrighty. So This is like good enough gear for now. Everything else is reses in this POV. Maybe a throwing speed belt if we're really feeling it, right? I have jewel sockets that I'm not gonna fill in progression. We could get rid of that one, and I'll figure out how to fill this other jewel socket, right? But so we can just leave them open for now. They'll be filled with any generic jewel that gives us damage, or maybe it's things that give us like necessary stats, like a careful planning or something. What is it? There's a jewel that I believe it's brute force solution. No, the other one. To strength. Let's just look. What do you converted to strength in radius? Whatever. Here we go. So fluid motion is strength to dex. We don't want that. Inertia, dex to strength. No. It's crazy. I know exactly what jewel I'm looking for here, but I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head. These are attribute conversion jewels, by the way. You guys are great for planning out how to like if you fall enough, if you get enough of these, if you find them, they're great ways to like fix your stats, right? Careful planning or careful planning for fixing decks, but we can see that the implicit on this alone will fix our decks. We don't actually need that. We know we need this large strength roll here. We can even get like a heavy belt to help fill in. Or let's say we get lucky, and while we have that int stat, that int jewel we have, we can put inefficient training there, put it in socket one to get 80 int. That's another way to fix our int, right? Then we don't even need the int stat on the amulet. A couple ways to go about getting our int, right? Just think, giving ourselves outs. But the important thing here is we're done picking out the damage for the character. We've kind of already asserted at this point in the character's Bible. How do we know this? Let's make sure the damage is all right. So every time we right click, we throw 5 mines. Or well, you use the skill. You throw 5 mines. Alrighty, 5 mines based off of this information here. Or correction, we throw 5 mines. This is not say that 203 DPS. That's not accurate. That's per mine DPS. Each mine does average of 68.9k. We throw about 3 mines a sec. We throw mines about 3 times a second with the current throwing speed. Given the crit stats that we have shown here, we do 200k DPS per mine. There are 5 mines being thrown at once because of minefield support. That's why this is good. Otherwise, because if you like hover this, it's going to say, oh yeah, you should take this off. It'll increase your damage substantially. No, it will not. Like, okay, oh man, I do 376k when throwing these mines now. But your mines you are throwing 1 mine at a time. Like, this is not good enough. Because with minefield and we're throwing 5 mines at a time, a couple ways to replicate this. You could do count 5 in here, for example. Count 5, go to full DPS, and now we see it's a million DPS. We're on a million DPS with a weapon that doesn't give us damage. That's insane, right? And now you kind of understand why Hexblast is so strong. With gear just like this, Hexblast immediately does everything you need it to do. So this is the bare bones basics of how to get Hexblast going. Now from here, what I like to usually do is just fill in the gear a little bit, right? So now we're gonna cut forward to the part where the gear fill it in because I don't have any interesting insight on how to fill in gear that comes with stats that are relevant to your character. I'm just mostly filling it in so that I can then look at it and go, oh, look at our defenses. Do we think this is enough for early progression, right? So we're going to cut forward to that now. All right, so the gear's been filled in. Let's talk about like what's in here now, just like, very quickly, right? I just life gear with nothing super special. A couple things of note, right, relative to specifically this build, is hubris circlet on a trickster because we have escape artist to get evasion from the ES on our helmet. So this base gives us the most ES. If we got like percent ES modifiers on here, it would then boost both the ES and evasion this gives us. You could also use like a deicide mask or any of the hybrid evasion ES mask things in order to say like take an evasion node and take an evasion mastery to get the suppressed node, the suppressed bonus from here. But I didn't think I needed that, so I didn't do that. You can also that lion pelt's perfectly fine. You just won't get ES from it. Other than that, shield, life, and crit chance. That's the important two stats here. Life and MS on our boots. I added an anoint to the amulet to give it prodigal to perfection, which is pretty cheap damage anoint. You can also get Fangs of the Viper for also pretty cheap. Prodigal Perfection is what I opted for because of the mana, just to help us again really fix the mana problem that this character endures. Like it is really bad, y'all. It is really, really, really bad. Trying to work with mana on this character, but we've got it working right. Like I can reserve 20 mines and it actually works out just fine, even with like additional room. If we wanted to make extra reservations, like say a clarity or a vitality or whatever, we have the space for that. You can also reserve it on life if you want to sacrifice other sockets, such as like not running Call to Arms and Daring Cry, maybe just running Vitality on life. That's another option. There's a handful of different ways you could go about getting that space, getting that in. Other things in here, just life, leaving res space. Like we're not capping reses because I usually don't do that in my POBs. Or at least my initial POBs. I just eyeball how much space I have, and then I have a throwing speed belt because that's just an essence that we can get one of at some point and slap it on a heavy belt and call it a day. Literally craft life if possible. That's an item. And so I left myself room on 2, 4, 7 rares to fix reses, which I think is more than enough room to cap res, and therefore we should be fine for the resistance side of thing. You can add in the config if you want to look at the max hit. I usually don't look at the max hit too religiously on a starting POB, just because like max hit is not super necessarily on. It's just more like, is the pool right and whatnot. And looking at the gear here with life on all these pieces and whatnot, we have 3,700 life or 3,600 life and 1,600 ES. That's a very, very good pool to work from. Like most hits are not killing us. Like most things that we could actually be terrified of, we wouldn't actually be dying to outright, and we're still doing again 1,000,000 DPS. This is early game damage. This is 4-link damage, right? So the next thing I would do is I would save this. I personally have a format for this. I have like a folder where I do this. So let's say I've got like, new folder. Or I wouldn't even make a folder, but I'd just say Hexblast progression. Boom. Alrighty. Now let's save this next one as Hexblast geared. Alrighty, let's start working on Hexblast geared now. The first step is to add 2 links to this character. So our best 2 links are Trap Mind damage and Void Manipulation, supposedly. I can tell you from personal experience, I want to increase crits. You never want your crit chance to be too low. Like without increased crits, we're at 40%. That just feels bad. So I usually take it if it's anywhere near competitive. And then it's going to say Trap and Mind damage or Void Manip. They're pretty close to each other in actual DPS, which means I will take Void Manip. Even though Trap and Mind is better in preloads, which is the reason to consider it over Void Manip here, I like the value. I value the way the game feels when I'm not preloading very highly. So this will be our 6th link. Now, for an SSF, we might have a 6-link Cardinal World, Restless Ward. We might get a 5-link, and we can do this. And the damage is still pretty good. What we're going to be really pushing for, though, is getting a source of curse on hit on a ring, right? We talked about earlier how we need a source of curse on hit so we can free up our weapon. So let's just say we have literally any ring. Like this could literally be a power ring. It does not matter. We get a power ring. We get it with, let's say we get a warlord ring. We get a little unlucky flammability on hit, and I'm crafting life on it. Unironically, this thing could literally have nothing else on the item besides these 2 lines, and I would wear it. Flammability on hit, because now we don't need a Dread Arc. We no longer need the Dread Arc, which means we can finally get a wand in here. Wand. Prophecy wand. Literally just slapping an essence on a prophecy wand is going to give us so much damage here. Shrieking Essence of Woe, because we're at the point now where we can do that. We are killing conquerors for these rings for fuck's sake, right? We can afford to Essence of Woe. Hopefully we hit, let's say we hit crit chance for spells as one of our rolls, and then I'm crafting on throwing speed. And now we're good. This is a very realistic weapon, very easy to attain, and our damage just from we've added a 5th link on our chest, and we have a wand and to replace. So we had a ring, so we could replace our weapon with a wand, and now we're already up to 2 million DPS. We're ramping, right? We could even maybe have found some jewels to fill the jewel sockets with. The jewels are highest at for these jewels tends to be throwing speed. I believe throwing speed is a prefix. Okay, so it tends to be throwing speed. And it's even targetable if you just reforge speed if you're in SSF. But these are 3.7% jewels. Now our damage is pretty close to we're over 2 million now. You might be thinking, why am I focused on speed here? Running speed? It's just because of feel. You can sometimes find better damage stats, but man, you don't get things that feel better than throwing speed. Other options available to us, right? We can start to add in defensive crafts like Fist taking ads on the helmet, Eldritch Implicits on our gear, which is going to be the major reason to consider replacing Doju's tenure, by the way. Doju's tenure is a ridiculous glove. The downside on it, the reduced cast speed, is entirely irrelevant for us, but the upside is entirely relevant for us. And the reason you would replace this is because it can't apply exposure, and there's a glove implicit from Eater of Worlds that can. And so you could get that to then no longer need, say, like this Wave of Conviction gem in here and replace this with a Bear Trap, for example. So then Bear Trap Combustion, and that throws our single target up. We add in a 6th link. That throws our damage up. And now you start to see, we'll just start adding changes that I named them one by one to really show you how this snowballs out of control so quickly. There's other ways to get our curse on hit as well. There are other things going as well, right? But we get the gloves that fixes defense. Like personally, I wouldn't do the bear trap thing because I like wave, and I also just prefer to have what in the world? Oh, my wave is not showing. There we go, fire. But you see, the bear trap is a lot more damage than this wave, by the way, right? Like bear trap, if I add it in here, is a ridiculous damage increase. Something else got taken out of here. Hold on a minute. What in the world bricked in my config? That's oh, my mine count is off. 5 mines. There we go. Okay. Everything's working right now. If I add bear trap in, it's a little bit of damage, but then you lose the damage from the gloves, right? You have to get it's basically the same damage with better quality of life, and you need a pair of gloves that is really competitive, and you can do that. But I like tenure. I'm gonna keep it on. We keep the shield on. This is hard to replace until we start reforging chaos on a shield, right? Why reforging chaos on a shield? Again, this is me thinking of my SSF brain right now, right? Because I'm thinking about group file and stuff, or maybe even using the leak mechanic, right? The leak mechanic might be able to put me out a really good chaos damage shield. But we're gonna go for reforge chaos because there's no chaos prefixes besides chaos spells, and there's no chaos suffixes besides the 2 rest suffix. So we'll likely end up with like this, and then again we'll just grab on life. Probably no crit chance, just because that's actually like a bit of a tough ask at first. But damage, we're up to 3 million now. The biggest upgrade that we're going to get for this character, by the way, is going to be a Sandstorm Visage. Remember I mentioned earlier there's going to be a helmet that we want? We want Sandstorm Visage as our helmet. But before we get to that, let's talk about why we want Sandstorm Visage real quick, right? Again, not super explanatory on the method, we're just more talking about the thing we want. Sandstorm Visage gives us damage. It gives us base spells crit. Even with increased crit supports in there, and we don't even have a crit roll on the wand, this thing is insane. It says, give me a lot of crit. We want this in the build. All right, boom. We're going to farm Sanctum for that. We have to farm Sanctum for that. Profane Proxy. Because we talked about earlier, we want this reservation. When we drop it, we're going to put it on, and we're going to go, oh yeah. It goes in our right ring so that the Skitterbot can chill on the other side. Because we can just shock with Hexblast. Our hits are massive. So then we can put Elemental Weakness in the other ring, right? Like, hold on. If I put Elemental Weakness in ring 2. All right. Now we have this is in there. We no longer need this Blasphemy Aura. We free up a lot of reservation space. Skitterbots are home. We still have a ton of mana unreserved to do these with if we wanted to, but we don't even need to if we don't want to. We could, we might not. A lot of characters that play Hexblast might not even like adjust their reservations to us just to leave room for the ridiculous cost, pardon me, of this skill. We still have our Wither Totems in, etc. We have a Sandstorm Visage, so we should recraft our weapon a little bit. Recraft our weapon to have crit instead, right? And now we get a ton more damage. All right, now that we have Sandstorm Visage and our crit is 100%, we should check and see if we even need increased crit support. So you can see we don't. We do not need this support anymore. All right, perfect. Now we can change over. Let's add in better supports here. Now we're at 6 link point because we're really geared right. Maybe we aren't wearing the Restless Ward anymore. Good thing it's not a damage chest, so we just replace it with a good chest. We're going to go with Void Manip and usually Trap in Mine. Can also be increased crit damage depending on our gear. Like both are fine. Also depends on your colors, right? All right, boom. And now we're at 8 million DPS. In the blink of an eye, we went from 1 million DPS on initial progression to 8 million DPS with a helmet and stuff. And we can get even further if we get more unethical with the jewels. We get, oh, my amulet, it's got like these two things on it. 1 second. Let me add a step to it. Amulets can get throwing speed, guys, if y'all didn't know. So, boom, give me some throwing speed on my amulet, please. Oh, boom, we've gone up 8.6 now. Belt is perfectly fine still. You might just want to upgrade to a Stygian if you don't need the strength, right? We leave these 2 slots alone. Boots are just the usual slot. Alrighty. Next up on the list is going to be we need clusters. Because clusters are going to be the big scaling thing. And you see how we're getting along with this, right? Like the building process, once you get out of the initial grog of figuring out a character, is just accelerado, just straight to the top, make it all work all the way top to bottom. And so while I'm talking about this, I'm going to talk about the other approach of building a POV that I do sometimes. And maybe I'll do one of these videos as I try things out in the method from the other perspective, where I start from the top of a character and bring it on down. Right? We bring a character from like what I would consider completely endgame viable to, budget as fuck. And then we make these, we need to make all of our clusters, right? We need medium clusters. What are they called? What's the word? What's the name? Ooh, Trap in Mine damage. There we go. Pull that over. We want Surprise Sabotage and Guerrilla Tactics. You might be thinking, where are we getting the points for this from? It's removing one of the 2 big sets of travel that we do. Like I would personally remove this and fill in these 2 clusters. Now this is a personal thing because that's really high damage, right? I chose to drop a lot of survivability to do that. You could instead, and this is why I say like you have to be comfortable doing your own build sometimes and like going through these motions, is that you could decide actually I'll drop the damage up top and replace it with the damage up here. And make the character stronger this way. Now the character still got stronger, but we didn't sacrifice all that defense that we gained from going down here. Right? Then you realize actually this is only level 90. This jewel is actually not what we want here because we need to get another good strong reservation. Look at we're like got enough mana where maybe we could try to fit in another reservation in. Let's go with it small. You need to be a small evasion or a small reservation efficiency. Ideally reservation efficiency, especially if you're in trade. 2 passive, Sublime Form. For Grace reservation efficiency, and then we can put that in. It also gives us all res, which is the reason we choose specifically Sublime Form. Then we can add in Zealotry. Now, we don't have space to reserve 20 mines quite right now, right? We can add in Enlightened support. And we're still not quite at 20 mines worth of space. We can look for in sources of increased mana, like on our gear. We can look to add mana on tree. We can look to do something like, changing points around a little bit. There's a couple ways that we can fit all this in here. Anyways, that's where I'm going to leave you with this video. Because now we're just going to get into the part where I start mindlessly gearing this character out for no reason and just pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. Because, you know, with enough push, I could probably take this character in any direction I want, whether it be unbelievably tanky or unbelievably high damage. And you'll see here, like, the truest version of the character when he, like, you know, settles on the end game gear and all the, like, beautifully, perfectly crafted wand and the insane shield and all that good stuff. The character is POB'd at 41 million DPS while also being, you know, high evasion and perfect crit cap, EHP of 50k, all that good stuff, right? Like you can really see the levels as you go all the way through the motions on the POB. You can see the jewels that come into play when you add in like this lethal pride, which that lethal pride is going to be right down here. It's why he paths all the way down here, so he can then get this lethal pride with suppression and +1 frenzy. This is a very high value lethal pride. Add in ancestral vision to then go suppress it, become ailment immune with some good gear, which I believe is on the boots. Yep, ailment immune boots, right? Like you can really start to push it. Balance of terror for wither on hit, so you don't need the wither totems anymore. To then make some room for other stuff like this dread banner and other reservations. You see, like you can really like push this wheel real far as you start to push a character. But it's important that when you're starting a character that you go through the motions to see how the early game looks and how you get into the mid and towards the end game where the character starts to really flourish. That's all. Thank you guys for watching. I'm sorry for the super long video. Hopefully when I edited this, it's kind of shorter, but this is mostly meant to just be a thought dump of how I work, and we'll refine this format. If you managed to watch it all the way in, let me know, and also really do give me feedback on how to make this format work better for you, because I want to make this work like overall as a format. All right. Thank you so much. I need to go. Thank you all. Peace out.